Hey folks, this is Kelani. Welcome back to another video where I want to sit down and have a chat about what's been on my mind the past week and then get to have a good giggle reading through the comments section afterwards. So this time I want to talk about where Battle for Azeroth can start to go right and where essentially we can get out of this little rut that we've been in for the past few months and where Battle for Azeroth can really reignite the light, I guess, underneath Blizzard's butts and get us back to a place where people are enjoying World of Warcraft and talking about how wonderful it is to be a part of this world instead of complaining about island expeditions. So as you may have noticed, I made a video talking about patch 8.15 coming soon and basically what we can get done to prepare for that patch. And honestly, there isn't a great deal which you can do to prepare for patch 8.15 because a lot of it is tied to the profession items coming in that new patch, the tools of the trade. So if you're not interested in those, sadly you don't really have much you can really prepare for. But that doesn't mean there isn't that much content coming, it's just not really anything you can do much about right now. And patch 8.15 is seemingly kind of small compared to some of the patches we've had in the past and certainly compared to patch 8.2. So if you weren't aware, patch 8.15 is going to bring those tools of the trade, it's going to bring a new round of the Brawlers Guild, so that could be fun. There's a new portal room, although the portal room actually kind of reduces how many places we can go to very easily because the typical portals that were in Dalaran specifically, which would take you to various capital cities and not just Orgrimmar or Silvermoon City, and then obviously for the Alliance that's Stormwind and Exodar, so those are actually gone. So you won't be able to portal straight over to Thunderbluff, and you won't be able to port over straight to the Undercity, although I guess that last one doesn't really matter. A few others are missing, so it's nice to have everything in one place, although this portal room I do believe is going to be both a good and bad thing because people will complain that they can't go to where they want to quite as easily as before. The allied races, the Zandalari trolls and the Kulturan humans, they'll be coming as well in patch 8.15, so if leveling is your kind of thing or you just want a race change to one of those new races, that could be a lot of fun too. One of the big parts of 8.15 obviously is going to be the story content because we're leading up to another raid. That story content could be pretty cool. I haven't looked into all of it so far, but there's a lot to do with the old gods and moving into that realm, and then we actually help Xal'atath do a few things, so we'll get to see the little Naifu again if you're a Shadow Priest throughout Legion. That might be entertaining for you, although I don't think it ends out all too well because obviously we do end up delving into the raid to try and fix something. Although, with all that being said, it does kind of feel like 8.15 hasn't really done much to get rid of the lapse in content. So we had the Battle of Dazar'alor raid, and then very shortly after we kind of ran out of things to do. You know, as soon as you cleared through the raid, that's kind of it. We're back to the good old login to raid. There isn't really much else to keep you going, and 8.15 doesn't really seem to be fixing all that much. After you've done the story content, and especially after that raid comes out, I feel like we're going to be back to the same old, especially with the new raid not dropping any higher item level gear compared to the Battle of Dazar'alor. That could be a big problem in the making, but we'll have to see how that goes. All of the items from the new raid have special effects. If they're tuned pretty well, then, you know, we're looking good, but if they're not tuned well, then we're not looking good at all. My main hope throughout all of this is that patch 8.15 isn't a huge patch because they've been saving for something big. All of that time, all of that effort hasn't gone into this patch, but it's been saved for the next patch, because the next patch is where we'll get that real big boost for World of Warcraft, Battle for Azeroth and the popularity of this game, because they sorely need it. Before we move on to start talking about patch 8.2, I wanted to touch on the raid just a little bit. We did get to poke around it on the PTR for a few days. I think the normal testing will actually have stopped by the time this video goes up. It might be still there for a few hours, but normal testing for Crucible of Storms was on the PTR for the weekend. It was Thursday through Monday, I believe. I could be wrong on the end date, so forgive me for that. But we also got a brief glimpse at heroic mode on the Crucible of Storms, and it looks like it's all going to be about these three items, which is really interesting because these three items follow through the entire raid. Apparently the first boss is a group of lackeys for N'Zoth who were ordered to basically collect these three items. There's the Void Stone, the Trident of the Deep Ocean, and then the Tidal Caller, something like that. And basically in the first boss, the bosses are using the items against you, and in the second boss, you're using the items against the boss itself. So healers get to pick up the Void Stone, tanks pick up the Trident, and then DPS pick up the Tidal Caller, or whatever that last one is, and then you use their special abilities to go throughout the fight. But again, on the first boss, you're fighting those special abilities, and then you're using them yourself on the second boss, and then those items, all three of them are actually available as loot from the second boss. So you kind of get to hold on to these artifacts, which are supposed to be these really powerful things, and we'll see where it goes from there, because tampering with powerful artifacts has obviously not gotten us into any trouble in the past, so why would it this time? From what I watched of the PTR testing, those bosses do seem fairly hard. They're going to be very mechanical. There's a lot of bits and pieces to kind of slot together for those bosses, so they're not going to be your run-of-the-mill Grong, I guess, where, you know, there's only 2 or 3 abilities to keep track of, or the Champion of Light, where that was completely steamrolled over. This raid seems like it might take people a little bit of time to get through. It is just a 2-boss raid, after all. It would be a bit of a shame if you could just steamroll your way through both bosses and then never go back again. So even though I've been bashing on 815 just a little bit for not having a super great amount of content, I am still really excited for it to launch. There's a few reasons for that. I'm excited to get into the profession items. They look really cool. I've been working through all of them on the PTR. I'll be able to explain all of them to you very shortly. And it's a nice little tidbit of information. It's a nice little story for you to go through to collect this item, which is super powerful for your profession. And all of the stories make sense. They all fit together, and they basically bestow upon you an item which you probably shouldn't have, which is kind of fun as well, and then kind of a shame that everybody with blacksmithing will have the same thing, but I guess you can't really get around that in an MMO. But they are really cool items. They have some really good effects. You know, you're actually going to be making use of this pretty much no matter which profession you've got, which I guess is the most important thing at the end of the day, because if you went down this line, this whole quest chain, and you got this item which is supposed to be super powerful, and then you never used it, that would feel incredibly lame. But, you know, blacksmiths get to repair their own gear, enchanters will get more materials for everything they disenchant after they pick up this new rod, tailors will be able to get any number of old crafting materials from little events out in the world, leatherworkers get a permanent bloodlust drum, you know, like drums of the mountain, drums of the maelstrom, all the different drums that we've got, they get a permanent one, and then they can also get a buff out in the world when they smack different drums. Again, I'll explain all of it in a dedicated video for you, because there's a lot to go through. The Brawlers Guild usually takes up a bit of time, so, you know, even though it might not take all that long to get through, that's still something that you can set aside a little bit of time and just kind of chill and do and get frustrated at, because that's what the Brawlers Guild does best. So that's another bit of a kind of a time sink, some way to enjoy yourself and just spend a bit of time in Azeroth. Again, got the allied races for those who enjoy leveling. I'll probably not level up one. I might race change to one depending on how things go and how they look, but the female troll looks like a female troll. That's cool. The male Zandalari looks a little odd because it's using animations which don't fully fit. They look cool, but I don't think it's really worth a race change, especially off of a blood elf, but that's just my opinion. Heirlooms are going up to 120 with that patch, which is really cool. I'll definitely be making use of that to level up some more alts. But the main reason I'm excited for 815 to launch is because 8.2 will go on the PTR very shortly afterwards. So the way that they've been doing the PTR cycles so far in Battle for Azeroth and for Legion actually was as soon as the patch goes live, the next patch goes onto the PTR very shortly afterwards. We're talking a matter of weeks, which means that they know a lot of what's going into 8.2 and it's already ready to be tested. Or fingers crossed it's ready to be tested, because I can't wait for that to actually hit PTR servers, because 8.2 I think is going to be the big patch for Battle for Azeroth, definitely right now. It's going to be make or break when patch 8.2 comes out, I guarantee. So patch 8.2 is going to be huge, and I mean huge. If you think like 8.1 was big, you have no idea. 8.2 has so many different little bits and pieces, and we're going to get 2 new zones. So obviously we have the Nazjatar zone, which we'll probably get to by a boat, back and forth, maybe a portal, we'll see. But that's out in the ocean somewhere, and I'm assuming we'll figure that out through story quests, maybe in 815 leading up to 8.2. That's probably how they're going to do it, but either way, we find something in the ocean, and we go down, and then we find Nazjatar. There's going to be a whole bunch of world content down there. Apparently it's going to be modeled after the Timeless Isle, although I'm pretty sure every open world zone has been supposed to be modeled after the Timeless Isle ever since the Timeless Isle actually became a thing, and everybody loved it and it was amazing, and we had so much time to just chill and spend and waste on the Timeless Isle. And then, you know, every time there's an open world zone, it's like, it's just like the Timeless Isle, guys. It's never been just like the Timeless Isle, Blizzard, but hopefully you can get this time right. They've got lots of new world quests for us, and I laughed. I know I laughed, don't you laugh. Apparently, new world quests, which are going to be different than anything we've ever seen before. Hopefully that's going to be a lot of fun. And there's even going to be some old PvP objectives for us to capture and hold to get zone-wide buffs, from what we remember, or what they told us at BlizzCon. They compared it to things like the PvP spires or towers. I can't remember quite what they were in Zanga Marsh, where, you know, if you controlled both or controlled all three. I think it was just 2 in Zangarmarsh. It was 3 in Hellfire Peninsula. So if you control them, you know, you get a zone-wide buff. Apparently they're going to bring that kind of thing back, so we might see some form of continuation between the faction conflict. I know down in Nazjatar you have a different storyline depending on whether you're Horde or Alliance. So once again, if you play both factions, you're going to get quite a bit more content compared to just playing one. And this Nazjatar is going to be pretty big. It's going to be exactly like Argus was for Legion, where, you know, you'll spend a lot of time there. It's going to progress the story, and hopefully we'll actually have something to do. But that's not the only new zone coming in patch 8.2. We're also getting Mechagon, which is essentially the home of the Mechanomes, I guess, or the Junkanomes, and there's a whole higher society of Mechanomes where the more parts you replace with mechanical and engineering bits and bobs, you know, the more of a Mechanome you become, the higher you go in social status. And then obviously the Junkanomes don't really like that because they're not willing to give all that up, and there's a whole story back and forth. But there is a mega dungeon included in that, which is going to be like Karazhan was for Legion. So a very long dungeon. Expect to spend probably 2-3 hours in there the first time we go through. These things are going to be huge, and, you know, later on it'll get broken down into 2, and then you'll be able to queue into it heroic, but it will start as mythic only, and it'll be a very long dungeon. Now, the Mechagon zone will also include a whole bunch of story content for obviously explaining why we're there, where we're going, who we're helping, are we overthrowing this aristocrats, or whatever you want to call them? Are we going to place these Junkanomes in control of their own future? We'll see. Hopefully the dungeon will explain a lot of that as well, but there's also going to be a lot of profession tie-in quests, apparently. So professions aren't just getting the tools of the trade in 8.15, apparently Mechagon will offer them quite a few other bits and bobs to continue having some relevancy. It's nice when professions have something to do throughout an expansion, instead of it being completely ignored except for the first month. 8.2 will also lead up to a new raid. We'll have a raid down in Nazjatar, Queen Azshara's Palace, which I talked a little bit about in the previous video like this, where, you know, we're finally tying up that very, very loose end at this point. It's been a long while since we saw Queen Azshara and actually managed to do something. We saw her in Legion, and that didn't go anywhere. You know, she just kind of walked away the only time we saw her, and then since then, it's been kind of a carrot dangling in front of our face, right? We maybe see something about her, but then she just never turns up. This, we're going down to her home, we're going into her house, and, you know, we'll see what happens there. We don't know if we're going to kill her, we don't know if she's going to get away, we don't know how that's going to turn out, but we do know that there's going to be some form of resolution there. Patch 8.2 will also bring us quite significant changes to the Heart of Azeroth system. So right now how it works is going to change completely. We have our Azerite armor, and we unlock bits and pieces in our Azerite armor, all the traits and powers and stuff, as we go up in amulet level. That's not going to be a thing. We'll be able to access all of our traits after we hit 50, I believe, in our amulet. Not sure how that's going to work, but 50 is the cap right now. And if we hit 50, then we'll be able to unlock everything forever, even the next few raid tiers worth of stuff. You know, we'll get a new piece, be able to unlock the entire thing, and never have to grind out artifact power again, because the Heart of Azeroth is going to become more like an artifact weapon from Legion, where it's going to have its own little talents. We're not too sure how any of this is going to work, which is why I am so excited to see how they're getting along with this, because if they do it right, that's going to be amazing. That's exactly what we've been asking for the entire time, and if they get it wrong, you know, that's going to be incredibly disappointing, and we'll kind of see if the other bits and pieces are worth staying around with, because the Heart of Azeroth is a core system in Battle for Azeroth, and if they can't get that right, we're going to have a few problems going forward. Hopefully it addresses some of the issues that we have with classes right now and them being a little bland, a little boring to play. Heart of Azeroth being a new talent tree could give us back bits and pieces that we lost in previous expansions going into Battle for Azeroth with all of the pruning. And again, if we get another talent tree, something like the artifact weapons, they provided a lot of bonuses to how a class works, and a lot of classes revolved entirely around their artifact. So getting some of that back might actually increase the playability of a lot of classes. We'll have to see when patch 8.2 finally gets onto the PTR. Patch 8.2 will also bring flying, more island expeditions, heroic warfronts, because I know all of those three things is exactly what you want to hear about. Island expeditions are probably the most enjoyed content right now in Battle for Azeroth, along with warfronts. But heroic warfronts can actually be pretty fun. So with heroic warfronts you can queue in as a full group, whereas right now you can't, which is silly, to be honest. But with heroic warfronts they're going to be a lot harder, offer up better rewards, and actually be challenging, and you can queue into them as a group. So you could basically gather your guildies together and play a big game of Warcraft RTS and actually have to do things. Hopefully you won't be able to win a heroic warfront if half your team is AFK, but we'll have to see how the balancing and tuning goes. But that's not it, there are other things coming in patch 8.2 as well, so you can see that's a pretty huge patch. If the patch can deliver on everything that they're promising, this could be huge for Battle for Azeroth. I think the key here is the 2 new zones, right? Because we're getting away from what we've been playing with for the last few months, last 5 months, 6 months nearly, and we get to go somewhere new. New stories in new zones with new characters and new things to care about. It's no longer Zandalar, it's no longer Culture Wrath. Hopefully this is the refresher that Battle for Azeroth needs, because until now it really feels like they've been trying to play catch up. And if they can't catch up by the time patch 8.2 comes out, that's going to be really bad for the game. Hopefully 8.15 is the last that they need to get caught up. You know, if we're not getting too much now, maybe we'll get a lot more later, and then we'll eventually get caught up, and patch 8.2 might be that point. If it is, I think Battle for Azeroth can still do really well. If it's not, if they can't get caught up by 8.2, I don't know if 8.3 could even recover from that. I definitely think 8.2 is going to be make or break in that regard. But if 8.2 is really good, 8.3 has to follow on. It has to keep that momentum going, because if it drops the ball again, they're setting themselves up for a really bad next expansion. You know, because I don't think we're getting anything past that. 8.3, then 8.3.5, and then maybe a minor patch after that, but I don't think we'll get another major patch. After that, it's going to be looking to the next expansion, whatever that may be. If we're heading into the Void, fantastic. If we're heading off onto, you know, another random tangent, cool. I hope it works. But if they manage to screw up 8.2 and then 8.3 just does nothing to recover, or if they even do really well in 8.2 and then 8.3 just throws it all away, that's going to be a really bad setup for the next expansion. But if 8.2 manages to destroy everything that we've seen in Battle for Azeroth so far and just blow us away, and then 8.3 continues with that, and we all have a great time, nobody's complaining about BFA, nobody even cares about island expeditions or warfronts anymore, which, let's be honest, would be a huge thing, then the next expansion could be set up to be another Legion. But either which way, I'm really looking forward to patch 8.2 on the PTR, and to obviously play patch 8.1.5, but I'm more excited about 8.2. What do you think about the future of Battle for Azeroth? If 8.2 does really well, do you think we'll line ourselves up for a great end of expansion and you'll continue playing and maybe bring back a few friends? Or do you think WoW's maybe just past its prime and there's nothing they could really do to recover what they've done in Battle for Azeroth so far? Leave all your thoughts in the comments section below. I hope you all have a wonderful week, but that's it for this video. A big thank you to all of our supporters over on Patreon. You can see their names floating by on screen. If you want to join these lovely guys and gals, you can find a link in the description below. Remember to leave a like just below the video before you leave, and if you want to see more, make sure to subscribe. But apart from that, thanks for watching folks, good luck and have fun, and as always I will see you next time.